Most businesses don't fail because of bad tech or weak tactics. They fail because they outgrow their own habits. In this episode, Larry Mandelberg shows how purpose, clarity, and vision can turn chaos into sustainable growth. Welcome to Rise to Lead, the podcast where heart-driven leaders come together to inspire and innovate. They will share actionable tips and insights that help you lead your team more successfully, advance your career or business as a leader, achieve greater impact, and experience deeper fulfillment. I'm your host, Regina Huber, guiding you through deep conversations about leadership that's rooted in service, freedom, and the desire to leave a positive mark on the world. Are you ready to create real change in your leadership, your career, your life? Join me for a complimentary Lead and Thrive session, a 60-minute one-on-one strategy session where we will discuss your specific needs and map out the next steps to lead yourself and others powerfully. Spots are limited, so don't wait. Visit transformyourperformance.com/Lead Thrive session to book your Lead and Thrive session today. Let's work together to make it happen. Welcome to Rise to Lead. With me today is Larry Mandelberg. It's great to have you here, Larry. Thanks for joining us and sharing your unique wisdom on Rise to Lead today.
Regina, thank you very much.
I love the first sentence of your bio already. It says, Larry Mandelberg solves complex problems.
This is true. This is not my statement. This is what my clients and my colleagues say.
Even better.
Yes.
Right? That's what counts. This consultant, speaker, and author represents the fifth generation of his family's business and 170 years of experience with organizational success. Larry has launched 4 startups, led a merger, and performed a successful turnaround. That's evidence of 6 complex problems solved. A prolific writer, Larry has published more than 80 columns as a sought-after speaker. He has delivered more than 60 business-changing keynotes and workshops, and he's been a guest on television, radio, talking about business and entrepreneurship. His new book is called Businesses Don't Fail, They Commit Suicide, and you can see it. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see it in the background. And we're going to talk more about that for sure. It presents 23 years of primary research into why businesses fail. Impressive. So again, welcome to the show, Larry.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure having you. So let's start with you, Larry. What brought you into your current role of consultant, speaker, and author, and this impressive bio that I just read to our audience?
I love that question because it speaks to something that is not of my own making. As a 5th generation of family-owned business, I was blessed with the opportunity to learn from the generations that came before me. That's why I have 170 years of experience. My family started in the 1850s, and I say that somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but my family was very progressive in that my great-great-grandfather went out of his way to share his knowledge with my great-grandfather and each generation down the line. And I started working when I was 8 years old. Some people find that not such a good thing. I found it wonderful. I went to work in the morning with my father before school. When school started, they took me to school. If I didn't have any activities after school, I went back to work. So I've been working for most of my life, and I love what I do. I love my work. And that ability of our family business to survive through an agrarian economy and an industrial economy and an information economy demonstrates a certain level of sustainability, the ability to adapt and adjust. And ever since I was young, both my father and I were fascinated with why organizations fail. Because we look at them all the time and we think that they look very good and very strong. And that was a bug that bit me. Why do organizations fail? Hence, as a teenager, I started researching that question and spent 23 years gathering data. All of that data is what's in that book. And for me to be able to talk to other business executives about what worked and what didn't, what succeeded, what failed, and then to apply those to my own businesses. I've had a number of businesses, has been just a remarkable experience. And that's why I am doing this. I am at a point in my life where I am focused on trying to share this knowledge. It's not about me and my wisdom. It's about the data that I've accumulated and sharing it with other people so that I can help them.
Okay, and that's of course great, because then we can all learn from your and your family's knowledge and wisdom. And I've also heard you say, Larry, no business ever failed due to external forces. So let's talk about that a little bit more. And maybe you have some, experience of your own, some lived experience in that sense. And if not, you probably have some examples.
Well, I have both. There is this, one of the things that I found when I was doing my research and I was talking to executives who had actually failed, the common theme was we ran out of money.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a reason for failure. Running out of money is not why anybody goes out of business. The reason they run out of money is because they made a bad decision prior to that. People like to make excuses about problems. They rarely are willing to take responsibility themselves. And COVID is a great example. So many restaurants went out of business during COVID, and so many businesses went out of business during COVID, non-retail businesses. And people say to me all the time, well, what about natural disasters? What about things like COVID? Well, my answer to that is, if you're the leader of an organization, you have taken on a responsibility for the care and well-being of that organization. There's nobody else that's going to be doing that. That is your job. And part of that job is anticipating and preparing the organization for things that might blindside you, things that might harm you, things that might damage you. So you are the responsible party no matter what happens. And let me give you a really, really powerful example that is about COVID that's in the book. When COVID hit, one of the things that people said was no gathering of people, no large gathering of people, right? Movie theaters shut down, restaurants shut down, theme parks shut down. Disney is the most, I can't imagine a company that is more dependent on bringing large groups of people together in small spaces. Almost every revenue generating activity Disney had got shut down overnight. And by the end of 2020, when COVID hit, their stock had basically crashed. The leadership team spent that year trying to figure out what to do. And by the end of the year, 2020, they had figured out how to monetize all of their content for delivery over the web. And by 2021, the end of 2021, they were one of the highest performing stocks on the market and could not only recovered, but had increased their value. So they were blindsided. Their business was virtually shut down. And they rotated. That leadership team took responsibility, rotated, identified the value they had, figured out a different way to deliver it and a market to deliver it to, and succeeded. They could have easily said, we're done. Those kinds of things have happened to me before, and both in a positive sense and in a negative sense. I like to let people know that I have a lot of empathy. I've actually committed business suicide myself. I actually had a situation where circumstances dictated that I lead my organization in a particular way. I failed to do it. We were so successful that our growth got ahead of our capacity. We were unable to fulfill the commitments that we were making to our market. And because of that, we went out of business. And that put me on the street. It put my employees on the street. It's a painful experience, but it was a very powerful learning experience as well. So when I say no business ever failed due to external factors, what I'm talking about is if you're the boss, you're responsible. You can't put that on anybody else.
Yes, and so I do want to say when those lockdowns were imposed, and I on purpose don't call it COVID, but lockdown, but because we know what happened, right? So there was an intention behind it, supposedly as well, right? And it did hit a lot of small in brick and mortar businesses, especially quite hard. Even also businesses like mine, where my lead generation depended mostly on in-person networking and speaking. So we had to pivot, and that hasn't always been easy for everybody, because there are people who are more prepared, as you said, right? More prepared technologically for these situations. But also it was a big surprise for a lot of people. And to handle that, of course, we also want to acknowledge that that's not always an easy task. Now, as we talk more about this pivoting and adaptability, what would you say to small business owners who are not necessarily, or who haven't been able to pivot so easily to, like, let's say, for example, online, to working online, or to do whatever was required at that time?
Well, for me, and let me say that I've owned 3 different technology companies. So I have a lot of familiarity in this space. I bought my first computer in 1973. So I literally have over half a century of experience with technology. And what I would say is that one of the biggest mistakes of small business owners is that they don't truly understand their purpose. They tend to approach their business as, I have a product, I have a service, I need to sell it, I need to make money, I need to make a profit. That's the wrong approach. Profit without purpose is pointless. That's one of my sayings, it's in the book. You, as a small business owner, the most important thing for you to do is to have a very clear understanding of your purpose. And your purpose is made up of several components. The keys to purpose that relate to your question are, you have to understand the value of what you offer. You have to understand who sees that value, who can benefit from that value that you're offering. And you need to understand how you're going to deliver that value. That's critical. What is it? Who is it valuable to? And how do I get it to them? When you understand that, then you can look for markets with a different perspective. You can say, instead of thinking about a particular niche and saying they would be good people to sell to, you say, who are the people that need what I'm selling? And how do I get it to them? And you can't physically deliver products and services to people as easily in person as you can over the web. So by understanding who your markets are, going to the internet becomes easier to market to them because you're no longer marketing to a large market segment, you're marketing to a need. If you have this need, we have a solution. You're not talking about a large market, you're talking about a specific need, right? A pain point, which gives you leverage for selling your product. It makes immediately, it says the people who have that pain point should be paying attention to you. So clarity of purpose. What's your value? Who is it valuable to? How do I deliver it? Those are the most important things for small businesses.
Okay, thank you for that. So you also say that success brings problems. I saw that somewhere. And that flips the usual script, right? So can you give us an example of a leader, could be a leader of a business, leader of a team, or both, who
Right.
was caught off guard by their own growth and what they missed or what they might have missed?
So one of my customers that had started, the original founder was still in charge. They'd been in business about 20 years. They started from a very small group of people, just a handful of people, and had grown to 50 people. One of the problems that they didn't see was that the way you have to manage 2 or 3 or 4 people is different than the way you have to manage 30 or 40 or 50 people. And what ended up happening was that different people in different areas of the organization started creating their own little silos, their own little groups, because they had their own proprietary way of working and managing and communicating. So you ended up with these silos not communicating with one another and not being aligned with the rest of the organization. So it was kind of like that. If you've ever seen that game where the horses are on the racetrack going around in circles on an oval and the horses are not together, they're going forward and back. That's the way that company was. They were never all together pulling in the same direction. They were always going at their own pace. And what ended up happening was sales and marketing got ahead of product delivery, and product delivery got ahead of support after the sale. So customers weren't getting the support they needed. Sales commitments weren't being fulfilled, and salespeople were having to deal with the bad reputation from prior clients. And it was all because they didn't understand how to bring that group of people together. When it's 3 or 4 people, it's easy, right? As you get larger, you have to have better systems, better communication, better structure to manage that growth. That's one classic example.
Right. So it's about alignment, and of course also about culture, right? So you have worked with organizations in transition or with growing organizations. So when their internal culture resists the growth that's needed for the sustainability that you talked about in the beginning of our conversation here, where should a leader start with that?
Well, that you bring up so there are 5 components of purpose. I've given you 3. The other 2, one of them is culture, and the 5th one is what I call vision. It's the reason the organization exists. So let me just give you a couple of examples. Change the way education works. And it's a longer vision than that. It speaks to some specifics about the type of change, but that's a big, hairy, audacious goal. We call those BHAGs. Here's another vision: no help wanted ads, which means everyone that wants a job has one, and they're treated properly, and every employer that has employees treats them properly, and they work so well together that they just naturally attract the right people and repel the wrong people. So you have tenure, so people stay. The reason you need this long-term vision: change the way education works, improve mental health care, whatever it may be, is because when you recruit people, what you want to do is recruit people to be part of something bigger than themselves, part of something that they can't do alone, but want to achieve with others. So what you have is you have this common goal that everyone wants to achieve. So when change is necessary, you can say, in order to move to this next level and continue moving towards our long-term goal, our long-term vision, it has nothing to do with the value you offer. We have to make a change. We will not get there if we don't make this change. Now, understanding how to put those two puzzle pieces together is a little complex and requires a lot of context. And I'm happy to talk to anyone about this offline if they want, but that's the secret. And it's about making change yours. So your question had a lot to do with resistance to change. One of the common problems is, why do we change that? We've been doing that for years and it's how we got so successful. Well, yeah, but it isn't going to work going forward. It's going to harm us. How do you make that change? I tell people when I speak, I always ask, how many of you think people, generally speaking, like change? Almost no hands go up. If there's a large enough audience, I'll get a few hands. Then I say, how many of you, generally speaking, think nobody likes change? And of course, everybody's hands go up. And I say, you're all wrong. Everybody loves change. Change is not the issue. The issue is everybody loves change they do unto others. Nobody likes change others do unto them. And then everybody starts laughing and they smile. And I say, so the secret is to make that change yours. Own it. Make it change that you're embracing and doing unto others. So you use that vision to connect it and say, this is how we're going to go forward with our vision. We're going to take this change because it's going to get us where we want to be, and we're going to own it.
This is great, Larry. I love this. And what's also really key here in this context is, of course, the communication of that vision, the correct communication of why the change is necessary, and all these individual elements of communication. So communication is just really key to also make your vision not just your vision, but a shared vision, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, so and what are, in your opinion, some signs that a company is being undermined by its own success before the actual decline becomes visible?
Well, one of the most common ones, as I already said, is there's a resistance to change. People say, I don't want to change. We've always done it this way and it works. Why are we changing now, right? Another common sign is when you have people doing the same task unnecessarily. So duplication of effort. Suddenly you see we're wasting energy over here doing this particular thing, right? That's always a bit of a problem. And one of the other things that happens often is you end up with people who say, I'm not willing to do that. So the organization starts designing its jobs around individual willingness and preferences instead of organizational needs, right? That's really a big deal. You cannot have individuals dictating the role they will play in an organization. The organization has to dictate the roles that are necessary for it to be successful, okay? So there's another couple of things that I'll mention. One is when you have a problem that arises and you spend time and you fix it and you think it's done, and then that same problem pops up again. It could be a quality control issue. It could be a communication issue. It could be a customer service issue. It could be an order fulfillment issue, but the problem keeps coming back. So you make a change, you think you got it fixed, and there it is again. I call that the whack-a-mole syndrome. There's an old game called whack-a-mole where these things popped up and you hit them with a hammer and another one pops up and you hit it with a hammer. They never stop. What that is people trying to fix symptoms, not problems. So you end up with people wasting time fixing symptoms that are masquerading as problems, and the problems never get solved. That's another classic sign. And the last one I'll give you is that suddenly something you're doing causes a problem. You have a client who gets upset and calls you and says, I need this, and this is what your people did, and that was a problem for me. And you realize that that was a policy or a procedure that you've had in place for years, and suddenly you see the boundary. You see the problem with it, right? Sometimes you'll have, here's a classic example. Somebody will request something special. Somebody offers it to them. Another client finds out that that other client got something special and comes to you and says, well, how come you didn't offer that to me? Well, you didn't ask. Oh, so I have to ask you for everything I want? If you're offering that service to one of your customers, you should offer it to every customer, right? I mean, this is not uncommon. You have two customers in the same industry. They talk to one another. They both, maybe you even got referred from one to the other one. And that requires structure. It requires rules. It requires certain boundaries, which reduces flexibility and causes change. And there you're now linking to change. And people say, I don't want to have to change. Well, we can't have this problem with our customers, right? We can't be treating customers differently. So those are four classic signs of problems.
Right. And I see this a lot also actually in the coaching world, where those differences are made just to make a sale sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I will, for example, in my case, what I will do is sometimes I will give partial scholarships under certain circumstances, right? Because there are circumstances that justify those partial scholarships.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I've worked with people in very low currency countries. And
Right.
of course, to them, the ticket is proportionally higher than to somebody in the US or in Europe, for example, right? So I see that a lot because I observe, and I also have been on sales calls as a potential client, and it's interesting to notice that. Anyway, so let's talk about. Oh, go ahead.
Let me make a quick comment about that.
Please do.
What you've done is identified something that could potentially be a big problem. So the question is, how do you fix that?
Mm-hmm.
And what you don't want to do is tell those low income countries, those people who you can help and want to help, you don't want to say no. So what you do is you create rules, you create policies, and you say, pick anything that you want. If the average wage in your country is at or below this level, we offer a special promotion. And that way, everybody knows, people in first world countries, second world countries, third world countries. So you're treating everybody with consistency, but you have to put it in writing. You have to document it. It has to be part of your operational policy, and everyone needs to know about it so there's no surprises. So you can make those kinds of things, but they need to not be random.
Yeah, I look more actually at currencies, and they of course fluctuate a lot in a lot of countries.
Of course.
Yeah, so it's sometimes a bit tough to establish an exact rule, but you're right. There is a policy behind it. Okay.
Right.
So talking about operational imperatives, you talk about this quite a bit, right? My first question is, what are they, or what are the most important ones for you?
Well, there are only 3 of them. In all of my research, I found there are only 3 reasons an organization fails, which was a little surprising to me. There is a lot of data behind this, But let me just give the three of them to you.
Okay.
It's a lack of clarity of purpose, which we've talked about. It's a lack of consistency of performance, which involves being able to be dependable. The key there is we make commitments, we fulfill commitments. We perform consistently. We don't make commitments we can't fulfill. We don't fail to fulfill commitments we make. And the third one is engagement of people. And the engagement of people is a combination of the communication piece, which again, it's fairly complicated because it's inbound, it's the gathering information, and it's the outbound, the distribution of information, coupled with one other thing, and that is the sense of ownership. In other words, you need people for people to be engaged. They have to have some kind of emotional reward. They have to, not financial, emotional. They have to feel like they're actually contributing to the organization. They have to feel like if they aren't doing their job, the organization won't be successful. It's the next best thing to cloning the boss. And I always say, you don't want to clone the boss. You want people smarter than you. You don't want everybody like you. You want people smarter than you. Clarity of purpose, consistency of performance, engagement of people. And they have to happen in that sequence. You cannot have consistency of performance if you don't have clarity of purpose. If you don't have clarity of purpose, you can't have everybody pulling in the same direction. If you don't have clarity of purpose, every organization has three resources, period. People, time, money. You spend them, you don't get them back. You waste them, they're gone forever. If you can't maximize your efficiency on people, time, and money by being clear on your purpose and making sure everybody's pulling consistently together in the same direction, you'll never be able to create consistent performance. Once you can create consistent performance, you've demonstrated the value of a team working together like a well-oiled machine, and the beauty of that balance and that ability to make commitments and fulfill them to clients. That's when you can start talking about, now we have to learn how to do a better job of communicating. And now you need to understand how important you are in this organization. That's where you get the engagement of people.
And that, of course, also has to do with recognizing everyone's unique brilliance, everyone's unique creativity, and knowing your people, first of all, because otherwise you will not really be able to get the best from them, right? And that's also something that I sometimes see with my clients that I work with, that their managers don't necessarily always do that. And that's what keeps people frustrated and it's not always the not wanting to contribute more, but they don't know how to, because they don't know how to show what else they got. And I think it is a manager's job to figure that out and to get to know their people so that they also know how to potentially redistribute tasks and responsibilities, and not just stick rigidly to job descriptions that were agreed on maybe 3 years ago.
Right. Well, you're bringing up a lot of things that I addressed in the book. The book is actually a fairly highly structured system that addresses those issues. And I want to point out, you just raised another sign of the problems of growth. You lose contact with your staff. The larger you get, the less time you have to spend with each person. And the ability to know everybody requires you have to depend on intermediate management to take care of that for you. So if you haven't made sure everybody is on the same page and performing at high levels and feeling like a part of the organization, you will not succeed. And it's really fascinating when I get into the nuts and bolts of this system and how it works. And I want to repeat this because it's very important. this is not my knowledge. This is not Larry's wisdom. This is data that Larry interpreted and put into a box. He created a theory. I ran it through a proof of concept, and it's been proven in the field. It's amazing how well it works. And it's all based on, human characteristics and human traits, because businesses are nothing more than a bunch of human beings, right?
Yes, that is so true. And so would you call what you're also presenting in your book, would you call that a framework of sorts?
It's absolutely a framework. It's a
Mhm.
framework, and I do deliver the framework in bits and pieces. I'm going to have a program available in the fall this year called Scaling Smarter. And it's this whole framework. It's a 6-month self-paced program for leadership teams. I don't want to dwell too much on that because I'm not here to sell. The reason I'm delivering this program is because, again, I'm trying to get this information to as many people as possible. I will talk to almost anybody for a short period of time, 15, 20 minutes, anything they want to talk about. You can get the book for $9, $10 online. Probably you could get it on sale, the Kindle version. You could probably get the Kindle version. It's on sale every once in a while for €6, $7. It's all in there. If you need more help, you can hire me. I'm doing this talk. I'm not trying to make money. I'm semi-retired. I'm trying to help people. So I just want to encourage people. There's a secret in here about what you need to do to create sustainable growth. Don't be afraid to look at it.
Okay, so all business owners listening, definitely get the book.
And managers. And
And
managers.
managers, yes, absolutely, absolutely. Thanks for adding that. And it is called Businesses Don't Fail, They Commit Suicide, for those of you who are listening to the audio. Okay.
Let me highlight one thing, if I may, please,
Please
Regina.
do.
The subtitle.
Mhm.
There's a science behind books. The title is supposed to get you to stop and say, what? Which my book does. But the subtitle is really the meat of the book. And the subtitle is How to Survive Success and Thrive in Good Times and Bad. So I focus on successful businesses that are either struggling because they've hit a plateau and they can't grow anymore, or they're growing and have so much pain through the growing process that they need help. They don't know where to turn. So it's about how to survive success and thrive.
In that context, I want to ask another question. You probably have answered it, at least in part already, but maybe there's something you might want to add. So in your opinion or in your experience, how can leaders unlearn the habits that made them successful, but are now potentially holding them back from sustainability? Any hack?
Yeah. Well, there's a bunch of them, and each person has different characteristics, different strengths, different obstacles they have to get over. The simple answer to that is you have to know yourself. And there are a couple of components to that. One is emotional intelligence, which I know you're familiar with. There are some assessment tools that you can take for understanding your level of emotional intelligence. I strongly recommend everybody, whether you're in a leadership role or not, take whatever assessments you're comfortable with, learn about yourself, learn about your strengths and your weaknesses, and trust the assessments. Give them the benefit of the doubt. Oftentimes, the thing that's our biggest obstacle, we don't see it, so we refuse to accept it when we're told. Trust the assessments. Talk to your colleagues. Talk to your peers. Do 360s, particularly for leaders. I'm sure you're familiar with 360s. Get that advice, listen to it, and hire a coach. Michael Jordan is often considered one of the greatest basketball players in the history of the game. And I feel he was. Michael Jordan once said, I have a coach. I don't mean my basketball coach. I have a basketball coach, but I have a personal coach. who helps me with my business and all of my stuff, not like a life coach, but a professional coach. And he said, and if I'm the greatest basketball player in the world and the most successful, and I need a coach, everybody needs a coach. I think it's fabulous. I use coaches. I think everybody should have a coach. You need to find one you can afford that's very good. And as you well know, coaching is a very personal, intimate thing. You need someone you can connect with. Use that and understand your tolerance for emotional change. If you are talkative and you talk a lot, look for places where you can be in rooms with other talkers and be silent. Force yourself not to talk. Make yourself uncomfortable. You'll probably perspire not saying anything. You'll be so uncomfortable. I've watched this. Practice being something you're not. Develop your strength in controlling your behavior. If you're a hurried up person, find environments where you can be slow and force yourself to be slow. Make yourself uncomfortable. If you're a detail-oriented purpose, paint. Go buy a paint kit. Get a blank paint canvas, something that doesn't have numbers or lines on it, and force yourself to create structure out of nothing. Those kinds of things are fabulous tools for developing not only the strength to overcome your shortcomings, but to help you identify them and learn how to manage them. That was a good question.
Thank you. Yes, self-leadership. It's a piece of self-leadership, and self-leadership is for everyone. And it's definitely also, in my opinion, it's the most important leadership trait or behavior to practice self-leadership, because without that, we can actually not sustainably be effective and successful as leaders, can we?
I agree. I completely agree.
Okay, so is there anything else that you would like to add, either about your book or in general, that I have not asked you yet and that you're burning to share with us?
Yeah, there's something that I want to share that I think your listeners and your viewers might find interesting. There's a thing that I identified called the arc of success, and it helps people understand what happens when success hits you. And it's very insightful. People go, oh, I never thought about it that way. And it's really very simple. It's a 5-step process. Somebody has an idea and they try it. And if it's successful, it creates growth. As you gain growth, what happens is you create complexity, right? It's much harder to manage 50 employees than 5. It's much harder to manage 50 clients than 5. That complexity creates the need for controls, rules, right? Boundaries. Controls create a lack of flexibility. And the lack of flexibility takes away the freedom of people who were in a very free environment at the beginning of the process. And that's when people start to suffer emotional trauma, because that's when you have to change. You have no choice. And for leaders, it's called the founder's trap. Suddenly, you don't get to just make the rules. I'll tell you what the rules are, and when they change, I'll change them and I'll tell you. And in the meantime, you do what I say. No, no, no. You have to put rules in place, and the leader has to live by them. They don't get the freedom to just change them when they feel like it. So again, idea, success, growth, complexity, control, lack of flexibility. If you remember those things, as you get to those end stages, the implementation of controls and the lack of flexibility, you'll be able to understand it and prepare your staff for it. You can say, if this works, this is what we're going to have to do. So let's be prepared.
Great, yes. And then you can build the infrastructure that is necessary for that process, right?
Yeah. And see, we're making change ours again. That's another process to make the change ours.
Right, right. Well, thank you so much for being an awesome guest today, Larry, and sharing so generously with us all. This has been great. Where can people find you most easily?
There's a website, Mandelberg.biz. It's my last name. But you can also just search for Businesses Don't Fail. There is a website, businessesdon'tfail.com, that will get you there. And if you can remember Businesses Don't Fail, you can do a Google search. I'm all over the internet. And the name, Businesses Don't Fail, They Commit Suicide. It's on all the popular platforms. So get to the website, send me an email, schedule a 20-minute consult. Happy to talk to you.
Great. Thank you for that offering. And to everyone else, thanks for listening in. And if this episode sparked something for you, share it with someone who would appreciate it, who might benefit, or post it so others can learn too from Larry's findings, from his experience and his insights. There's more leadership insight waiting on Rise to Lead for you. And I hope you will join me again next week when you will meet another incredible guest.
Thank you so much, Regina.
If something in your leadership feels off, or you're ready to lead with more ease and authenticity, let's talk. In a free 60-minute Lead and Thrive session, we'll cut through the noise, get honest about what's really going on, and map out your next bold move. No cookie cutter, no surface level, just real clarity and the freedom to lead as you. Spots are limited. Go to transformyourperformance.com/lead thrive session to grab yours. Lead like you mean it.